Hello, my name is Charlie. I'm a psychologist here at All Smiles. And today we're going to talk about the midlife crisis. What is it? What do we know? What does research say? And how can we understand it in a helpful way? So to begin with, to establish what is the midlife crisis. And here I think we all know what I'm talking about. It's the person in their 40s to 60s who go through these thoughts about their own mortality and achievements in life, and they realize they want to change things around. So they quit their job, they leave their wife, they get a sports car, they change their style, and they start acting differently and quite extreme. We all have this image, but still, research shows that perhaps we don't really know what the midlife crisis is. So to begin with, is it something that everyone goes through? It appears not. Research does not support that it's a universal thing happening everywhere. And also, it's not necessarily that we have crises more often in midlife. Research shows that we have crises about as often in midlife as in other parts of our lives. Then also, research casts doubts on if we really know the midlife crisis in its most superficial ways. So this image of the wife, leaving the wife and getting a new job and all that. People who report having a crisis do not report having these typical signs of a midlife crisis. Then also, other research calls into question if we really understand the behind the working mechanisms behind the midlife crisis. So if it's so people, rather than reporting that it's caused by these reflections about mortality and achievements, they tell that the midlife crisis is most often centered around things happening in their lives. So divorce, getting a new job, losing a close one, becoming ill yourself. These are the things that are happening and that the crisis is centered around. And in fact, when it comes to these reflections about mortality and achievements, these are things that research shows follow people throughout their lives. They're not reflections which kick in when you turn 40. So, what have we established? It appears that midlife crisis is more of a myth rather than a universal phenomenon. But why is this even a problem? Why is it worth talking about? And that is because this myth may actually be causing harm. So, because we risk disregarding some very important signs of distress, as just a midlife crisis, something natural which you have to pass through, go through, and there's no reason for us to intervene when our friends are going through this. So, if our friend suddenly leaves his wife for 12 years, quits his job, gets a sports car, we don't really realize the seriousness of these sudden changes. And we may be missing out on signs of budding mental health issues, such as mania or suicidal ideation. And if we don't realize this and we don't intervene, we risk letting the people we love end up in really bad situations which can cause a lot of harm and hurt. So having established that, the midlife crisis, it appears to be somewhat of a myth according to research, and also it may be a harmful myth. We have reason to think twice about our friend who appears to have a midlife crisis, and we have reason to consider mental health support. Still, it appears that some people do go through these crises, midlife or not, and the question is, how do we understand this and how do we deal with that? And for this, it may be more useful to think of the midlife crisis as role transitions. When life changes, you change. So say we lose a job, a marriage, or our children move out. These are things which before have held us. They have provided us a sense of identity, community, they've given us daily tasks and a purpose. And when they disappear, it can feel like a part of us disappears. And this may very well feel like a crisis. And it's understandable that it causes us a lot of distress and confusion. And being in such a role transition, we are forced to rethink things. We have to rethink who we are, who we want to be, who we want to show up as in other people's lives, and who we don't want to show up as, and what are our boundaries, and how do we want to show up in our own lives? Who do we want to be, and what lives do we want to create for ourselves? These are quite dizzying but exciting questions to have for yourself, and having someone external to talk about this with is quite helpful to many. So if you would think it would be helpful to talk to someone about where you're at in life and where you want to be, then don't hesitate to reach out and schedule a session with us here at All Smiles.